Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, Shiva, how are you?
Good, good.
Good morning, everybody. We'll give it a few minutes here. A lot of people will join in, and I know there's a lot to show. So excited to see what Shiva and the team have been working on. So we'll just give it till, as I mentioned, 3 after, as we usually do, and we'll get right on into it. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Doing well. How's everybody going?
Good, good, good. Were you able to get any deeper into the version 8?
A little bit. Still have a lot of reading to do.
What are you just kind of going through each control in terms of the reading, or how are you approaching it?
Yeah, pretty much. Just wanted to just get real familiar with every single one as much as I could, really.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That was a good conversation we had on LinkedIn with everybody chiming in there. What Tim and I are referring to is CIS released controls version 8 yesterday. For those of you that follow CIS, they collapsed the 20 into 18. They added service provider management. They, in IG1, there are some pretty stringent, I don't know if stringent's the right word, Tim, but pretty hefty goals there. Is that a right way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. I think overall it's not a huge burden, but and it's things that need to be done. So
yeah.
And it's just really good that they're kind of looking at things from different angles now.
Yeah, it looks really good. I think they did a great job. I'm glad I'm glad we can reference at least bare minimum, IR plans, the way you were even saying, like, which IG do you want to shoot for, Mr. Customer? Not do you want to shoot? Do you want to use a framework? It's which one.
Yeah, I think a lot of us struggle with just showing the need, that and kind of justifying doing all the things that we want to do. So, having an implementation group 1 that is, really in terms of security, kind of on the basic side, but at least, showing that these are the minimum things that need to be done. And, to a client, once they understand that, this is, if they're going to go for, I guess, the lightweight version of the 3, these things are still foundational and still required.
Yeah. So Adam, to your question, CIS is global. Fantastic framework, used globally, and maps across to everything. There's a great tool, I'll put it in here, called Navigator, and there's also a third party called Audit Scripts that maps to all the global compliances. So Nick, yeah, we still have to work with them, and she's open to it. Phyllis Lee, the senior director of controls, to putting, respond and recover in it. So we're gonna work with her and Ryan Weeks on that. So, all right, I know it's 4 past. We've got 30 in here so far. So if you're new, I don't think anybody is here new, but if you are new, welcome. This is our weekly partner call. We've been doing for over a year now. It's hard to believe that, but it is true. So how it works is I'm going to turn the controls and dashboard over to the Shiva in terms of presentation, which has Zoom, so I don't have to turn much over to him. But Shiva will take over and go through what's new. I'll keep an eye on chat, and we'll get going. All right, Shiva, floor is yours. And I don't know if you're mute. I think you're muted still, unless you start talking. Or maybe you didn't start talking.
Okay, so folks, this is basically where we are in terms of like the beta updates. I wanted to basically put that up front. We basically are, but as you can see, we're rapidly fixing the bugs. We're trying to basically get to a proper baseline. We are basically hovering around this range. Basically, the bug counts have gone up and down, but essentially kind of the team has been working hard to basically fix the bugs through. And basically, we just wanted to be transparent in terms of basically, these are basically the kinds of issues that we're finding. So this basically shows you the critical bugs. These are basically bugs which are high. These are minor bugs, and this is the total. So this is basically the scenario that we are seeing at this point of time. So we are seeing the descending graph. So we basically are very close to a good release. So with that said, basically, we kind of spoke. As a team, we basically sat down, we spoke through the whole thing, and then we essentially kind of came up with these final timelines. May 27th, 8 a.m. Basically, we can do the formal beta launch where you can basically use the beta. I'll also explain there are certain features as part of that beta, which basically makes it very easy for anybody to be able to trial the beta. And also we basically can look at doing private betas if anybody wants to do it and wants to use that instance. We basically expect like 2 weeks where you will give us feedback and we will basically be adding up any final touch-ups to the whole thing. And that essentially means that for the first set of partners, we will essentially start the migration on June 14th. And for these partners, the way that it will work is we will essentially have like 2 DNS names created, one with the old and one with the new, and we would have migrated your instance over. So we will basically keep both the instances alive, but basically all the agents will still report to the old one. We will essentially kind of have upgraded we'll have upgraded your agents, and then we will basically send data to both the old and new instances, so that basically in case there is any emergency or something, some report that you needed and it is not working, etc., you are not basically left in the lurch. So that essentially will be taken care of. And then once we basically get a go ahead from you folks for a week, then on June 27th, basically we'll be migrating all the partners and shutting down the existing other instances that are there. So this is essentially the timeline that we're looking at. And surprisingly, like May 27th and June 27th is actually our lead developer Swami's basically what he calls official and unofficial birthdays. So basically it is lined up with those dates so that we don't forget those dates. Second, basically what we wanted to give you is an update. Basically, we have basically started a SOC 2 compliance because we basically have started hearing from a lot of you that we essentially need to be SOC 2 compliant. So we have started the process. There is basically a company that has basically started working with us in terms of getting the SOC 2 compliance. And we expect to have the certification done by mid to end of June. And basically we have had basically SOC 2 because of the feedback that we have received from the initial assessment that they have done. There are basically a couple of changes to the architecture, which is one of the reasons why the beta is kind of getting pushed by almost like 2 weeks from what we planned earlier. The most important change that you will see, and which I was talking about, is basically the entire authentication piece. What the SOC 2 compliance folks came in and they looked at the entire thing and they said, yeah, we'll have to go through your entire authentication and authorization code and basically then decide whether essentially we can, it meets all the criteria or it doesn't meet the criteria. So one of the things that they suggested as part of this entire thing was, why don't you folks basically migrate to a, 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 a component which is already SOC 2 compliant? And their suggestion was basically migrate to Keycloak. And we actually basically took Keycloak. We actually did the entire experimentation. And then we basically figured out that with Keycloak, we basically got a bunch of advantages. One is it basically provides a whole bunch of certifications out of the box. It's open source, and basically the source code can be audited by anyone. So that basically helps. Second is that you can support multiple authentication providers, including basically any OIDC or SAML providers. So you can simultaneously basically integrate with Office 365 on one side, local AD on the other side, and all of this can be essentially can take place from one tenant. And then basically what we've done is we've been able to integrate this. And as part of this integration, we also kind of created another model. Now, I do not know whether this is going to be used or not used, but technically going forward with this Keycloak integration and the way that we have integrated the open distro for Kibana with this particular product, it will be possible for an MSSP to essentially offer this product to their MSPs and basically offer any advice on top of it. So from an architectural perspective, to explain it, as an MSSP, because we have the Keycloak and the concept of realms, you can add MSP customers under you under that realm, and then you can essentially kind of, they can log into their realm and basically manage their customers and do everything. And again, when we come into this, what we do is that for each realm that is there in Keycloak, we are basically creating a separate set of indexes, one which is basically a time series index and one which is the main index. Those are basically getting created in your open distro. So basically there is partitioning of the entire data set that basically occurs for each of the MSPs. And you being the super admin can essentially can basically do an impersonation of a login into any MSP and provide overall admin and basically guidance in case it is required. As I said, this is basically an option that basically will get enabled by this. Now, whether it is a choice whether somebody uses it or not, but basically by architecture, it basically allows you to do this.
Sure. So let's take it from the standpoint of most of our customers or most of our partners on the call, they're MSPs. If they're working with co-managed IT and those co-managed IT have, let's just say, multiple companies under them they manage, I'm assuming the same thing could hold true.
That's correct.
Okay. Tim saying, so you're saying we can go into a three-tier setup using Keycloak, main, sub, or main, sub of sub.
Yes. Okay. So we finished, we basically worked on this piece. And then the next thing which came up was basically we were migrating all the integrations. So as we were migrating the integrations, we basically were quite unhappy with the way the integrations were and the lack of flexibility that was there in the integrations today. And we basically went back and said, how do we add more value? And then we essentially kind of pulled out some stats. And we basically noticed that only 10% of our partners have configured notification rules. And if you look at some of the other pieces, it's basically much lower. So the question was, how do we essentially, can we make this better? Can we make this something that is more usable, something that's more easy for do this? So with that said, what we essentially did was we kind of essentially went back and said, what can we do to basically make this better? And then we started searching. We said, okay, we'll build this, we build that, etc. And then finally, we kind of almost like we found something which essentially we thought would basically benefit everybody that is basically here in our group, as well as basically us also in terms of being able to deliver faster things to you. So we basically then said, okay, can we basically integrate a SOAR platform, basically where people can create their own workflows and decide how they want to do this? And basically then we can even put a dedicated team that can independently look at this SOAR platform. So the result of that was essentially this, right? So I'm just going to show you this. So we actually built the complete ConnectWise workflows and basically put it together. And we basically have kind of tested everything, and this is basically going to be the way that it is going to happen. So first is that this, for people who, some of you may be familiar, but essentially this is essentially the open source SOAR platform called Shuffle. And basically Shuffle has a bunch of built-in integrations. And what we've done is we built a whole bunch of integrations ourselves, right? So we basically built integrations for basically ConnectWise. We're building the connection, the integrations for Autotask and all of those pieces. Plus, basically, there are a bunch of other integrations that are available, such as email, etc. And what we are doing from our platform again is that you can essentially, since what this platform allows us to do is to also define our own platform, which is CyberCNS, as an endpoint. So using the open API specifications that we are exposing, you can essentially write workflows which basically pulls information from CyberCNS and executes any sort of workflow. So this basically allows you to do things like you can basically do this on a trigger, which is either a webhook, or you could basically have a scheduled tasks which basically take place. So it's very simple. So for example, if you look at this ConnectWise node, what we've done is we basically created what is the authentication that's required for ConnectWise. And then these are all the actions that basically we have created. And this basically is a plugin that we've created. And I'm just being very candid, right? We basically, in order to get this plugin created, tested, and basically put into Shuffle, it took us basically approximately like 2 days of work to basically get it done. So in the older model, we were basically creating these individual integrations and then again integrating and spending a lot of time with it and not being able to reuse it across multiple places. Now we will be able to kind of put this in here, and whatever functions we are doing, we'll be able to kind of integrate it with some form of a webhook or a basically API call, or basically using any of the other scheduling mechanisms, we will be able to kind of, you can basically create these workflows. So we're going to basically expose this entire interface to you so that you can basically want to create your own workflows. You want to basically kind of pull data from somewhere else. Like you want to send something to PagerDuty, you want to basically look at, you want to pull some data from AWS, or you want to basically pull MISP, or you want to create a ticket in MISP or the Hive. No problem. All of that basically will be exposed over here. So we are not going to basically remove any functions of Shuffle itself, but we're going to use that platform to essentially deliver so more value to everyone, because you can use the same platform which is Shuffle, and you can also basically use our platform to basically augment Shuffle in terms of basically doing any form of notifications and workflows. So this basically is what we've been working on. And this basically, we kind of got all the integration modules basically put in place and undergoing testing. So this will essentially also be part of the beta. So that way, the whole integrations, which is basically slightly inflexible, will now become flexible. Now you can choose what you want to be alerting on, how you want to alert, what fields you want. Everything basically is decided by you. And we will basically build a default set of workflows. And that is something that basically comes up in some of the future slides. So we basically, I will basically talk about that, but essentially this is one of the major things that we've done, which is basically integrated Shuffle into the platform. And so that allows you to basically create whatever workflows you want. And that way you're not basically waiting on us to release anything in order to basically do any customized job. And even if there is anything that needs to be customized, it's not a problem, because we can essentially throw plugins into Shuffle, and that basically the that is independent, and that can basically continue on, and it does not require UI changes and all of those pieces. So what are the other items that we progressed on? We basically have compared all our unauthenticated scans with various platforms in terms of IIS, WordPress, PHP, Joomla, etc. And we are basically getting the same results at Nessus and Tenable. We had a lot of detailed discussions with Carl last week, and then we basically have better looking external scan reports with better summaries, etc. We finished also a complete Sophos detailed firewall scan, just like Sonic Wall. And we basically have are almost like 50% complete with 3 other platforms, which basically we'll send to different people to essentially verify the details. We basically have the initial integration of Kaseya integration also done. And we also have basically kind of done the file-based scans, which basically checks for file versions rather than application versions. And this is basically removing almost 90% of the false positives that we are seeing today. The next one is basically we've done the complete integration of Open Distro Elasticsearch with Keycloak. So now essentially I'll be able to, like, when you basically log into the CyberCNS platform and then you basically click on the Elasticsearch, you will be able to access Elasticsearch with the same user ID password, and then it is transparent to you. What we need help is in, we believe that on a daily basis, we need to be able to send you some sort of summary reports, which basically tells you the health of the entire set of customers, etc. So if there is some format that basically we can get help from you folks, so that we can essentially start making that something as a workflow and basically making it a default workflow, that will help. Second is, what are the default alerts and notifications that we have to, because today, when we notice that the notifications and configuring notifications, not many people have done it, we realize that it's a little difficult. But what can we do in terms of what are the default alerts and notifications that must be configured out of the box so that nobody needs to think about it? It is just that you go and enable all of them and then basically say, yeah, I need all of this. And then you can switch off anything that you feel is too noisy. The other thing that we're working on basically is something that Dennis had asked in terms of file integrity monitoring. And last but not the least, this was a question. Basically, we are basically getting a lot of information from OS Query, including data on unknown process funds, etc. Should we essentially be raising alerts or basically showing those events somewhere is basically a question I had for you folks. So these were basically some of the items that we were working on in the past couple of weeks, and basically we will be bringing these to fruition in the next thing. But if you can get some help on these specific pieces, that would essentially kind of help us give everyone a much better experience. And I have Andrew, who is basically Andrew Watzko, who's basically told me that he's going to send me some examples of tables that are looking more 2020-ish, because our current tables look very 1990s. So essentially, once we get that, we will essentially also improve the reports of the whole thing. So this essentially is what we basically are looking at basically to do in the next 3 to 4 weeks, where basically all of these will be coming together. And this is essentially like the initial version should have most of the things, and then there are these daily summary reports, and all of these essentially will come as part of the subsequent week releases of the beta that we basically put out. So that said, basically what we basically, we've been constantly being asked by a number of people saying that what is the final roadmap? What are you guys going to do with this whole product, and what do you plan to do? Now, instead of basically saying that, yes, this is something that we decide and we're basically going to put together, I put out a slide. So my only request is like, please take this as basically just, we think that this is the way we should progress. And what we are looking for is feedback from you saying that do this or don't do this. And you folks know as well as I do that we take your feedback very seriously. When we started initially, you folks told us not to enter into patch management. We never entered into patch management. Now a bunch of folks are telling us to get into patch management. So we basically moved into patch management. So this basically is kind of what I'm going to present right now is basically what we're seeing for the next 1 year. And if somebody asks us, can we essentially look at this as the next year roadmap, is a question that I wanted to put to everyone. Now, what I am thinking of a roadmap for this product as we take it forward is to become kind of the MSP IDR platform, which is identify, detect, and remediate platform, right? So what we are basically looking at is like we started with vulnerability identification, and then with your help, we basically kind of gone into vulnerability management. I believe that we will essentially be in good shape with compliance reporting with this release, but I don't think we will basically reach compliance management immediately. But I'm hoping that as we basically go through the process of multiple calls and feedback from you, we will eventually get to compliance management. We're also basically putting together something which is called best practices check. Now, what this best practices check is basically we've got data from like some of the top cybersecurity companies, which basically are working in areas like government security, etc. And those people have published a set of internal guidelines in terms of what are the best practices basically that need to be followed for enterprises. Now, what we've done is that we've distilled that down and basically made what is relevant for small and medium businesses. And we basically brought back those best practices. While we have a lot of it in basically the compliance management, compliance reporting, what I found in the best practices check was like it's very specific in terms of specific registry values which have to be at in a certain way in order to thwart certain attacks, which basically is not being addressed by any of the compliances which are there right now. So this basically is something that we essentially will achieve with this beta and the feedback, and then probably in the next couple of months. And as I said, we've already basically kind of going down the path of putting the SOAR, and we want to essentially kind of enhance that platform to make sure that anything that you want to remediate, anything that you want to pull into the system, you're able to pull into the system, and you're able to kind of put this together. And one of the ideas of putting this SOAR together also is like there are a few people who are saying, I have, say, results from some other scanner, which I want to basically pull into the same system and then basically be able to visualize it. Can I do it? Yes. We basically will give you plugins inside the SOAR, which will allow you to do this. So if you're able to do all of this, the only thing that will be left in this whole identify, detect, remediate space would be that an integration with an open source IDS. And one of the things that we see with, especially with Shuffle and OS Query, etc., it has a very good kind of integration with Zeek, which basically is an open source IDS. So if you basically install a version of Zeek that we essentially provide, it will essentially provide you with all the events and basically data corresponding to it, becoming basically like a low-cost SIM platform, which will then basically make you have a single platform that essentially allows you to make your security operations basically look at, and we can correlate and integrate these three, saying that, okay, if I see basically something which is happening in the network, does it correspond to a vulnerability? If it corresponds to a vulnerability, can I basically auto patch it using the SOAR? So these kinds of workflows as a group, if we can come up with and we can basically put these as best practices, then this platform can become something that is useful for everyone and basically is also cost effective. And one does not need to manage 5 or 6 different products to basically get to a good state. That is basically what we were thinking could be basically a roadmap for a year or so. Now, I would leave it up to this group to basically decide whether we are in the right direction, wrong direction. We should stick to what we are right now. And basically, I will take that feedback very seriously.
So Shiva, do you want to address this first and then go back to the previous slide in terms of the help you need, or how do you want to approach the Q&A here?
In any format that the team wants to approach it, any way is fine.
All right, let's just start with this. Tim was thinking exactly what I was, Shiva, which is I think you took it for granted, and I say that in a respectful manner because of the system. But I think asset management, authorized, unauthorized assets, would be even before vulnerability identification. It's a huge missing piece. Tim, please chime in, but it's a huge missing piece in the whole equation.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe take a step back and look at these controls. And I mean, we're picking on CIS today, I guess, because it's, you know, on the top of everybody's minds, but I think these things are valid across the board for any framework. But
right,
you know, let's look at these controls one by one and determine if CyberCNS, you know, if it's in scope for CyberCNS to do. And then if it is, you know, is it something that's currently doable and maybe easy to do? And if not, then I'd like to maybe say, let's direct some development efforts into specifically that. So looking at this 1.2, you know, they specifically say, you know, look once a week at your assets that you're seeing on the network, determine if they're authorized or not. And if they're not, then, you know, have a process where you can choose to pull it from the network, or, you know, whatever else you want to do from an administrative point of view. But, you know, maybe that's a thing we do. Maybe you have a built-in weekly report, or we can even go daily, and that says, here are assets that we're seeing today that we didn't see yesterday. What do you want to do about it? And then, you know, that could be as simple as, you know, a function within the application where we mark it, yes, we expect this device to be here, it's good to go, or no, let's do some investigation on it. Or, you know, option C is, freak out, raise an alert to the SOAR. Maybe that kicks off a firewall rule that denies it from talking to anything on the network, and Art poisons it and does whatever we want to do. But maybe build some of these things into the product.
Well, Tim, can I just say something? Then I'd love Shiva's thoughts here. I just want to give you a real life example of something I was personally involved in. So my girlfriend's company is a international, they're a distributor, and we were putting in an Arlo system over the weekend. Lo and behold, the firewall and we won't talk about the MSP they have. Let's just say we had access, easy access, and to be able to plug the Arlo device, the WAP, portion of it into the internet. To this day, the MSP, we know it's safe, quote unquote safe, because we did it. But to this day, the MSP doesn't even know that something is in line in their network. So just your thoughts, Tim, just basic things that just come all the way back to basic blocking and tackling that could be huge threat vectors. Or your example of the computer in the conference room. So
right. So yeah, I don't think we have many good tools right now, in the MSP stack that do this, and this is where CyberCNS comes in, as a basic control to know what's on your network. And I think if we build those features up before going too far down the road with IDS and FIMS and everything, let's build on these features, look at the specific controls as they're recommended by a framework such as the CIS, and do them in a way that is that follows the prescription.
Yeah, it's why in the enterprise, even in the enterprise, Tim, where Sunil just went, Sunil Yu, this company, a startup called Jupiter One, which has a ton of capital from Bain behind it, a big PE. But there's no good asset tracking even in the enterprise, so to speak. And for them, it's all assets, right? In other words, a crypto wallet is an asset if it's on there. You know what I mean? Anything can be tagged as an asset in this system. So
if we talk about basic asset management as well, then that's something that is maybe something that's manually entered. Maybe step one is we go into CyberCNS and we type in all the stuff that we think we have, and then let the discovery tool discover it and match, make a match between what is discovered and what we think we have. And then if things aren't lining up either direction, then we can take actions on that.
And Daniel, I'd love to hear your thoughts in a second too, and just the last thing I'll say, Tim, and something even I talk about all the time is okay. And Dennis, when we're working on, finalizing this for these webinars for CyberCNS, it's okay, here's these 10 assets. What's on them? Could we start, putting, not only can we enter information in on the asset, but then, again, where's the critical data, right? And I don't know if we're going to go down the, the whole quote unquote network path, but where are the crown jewels?
Somebody on MSP Geek made a post yesterday that was interesting, that they worked, they were telling a story from the past, but they were at an MSP and a client called him and said that a technician had left a hard drive at their office, and that hard drive had data on it from another client. So, I don't know if this is something we want to address, but what if we are tracking that with something like CyberCNS and an external USB hard drive, right? What's on this thing, who is it assigned to? This gets into asset tracking, and there are other tools. We have a tool called Snipe It that we use that, it tracks who has what phone, down to furniture. You can assign furniture to people, but that's probably most likely way out of scope for this, but just kind of thinking along those lines, a hard drive with data on it is a piece of technology. It is your data, so it's one of those things that needs, we have to be in charge of, and it's our client's data, which makes it that much more sensitive.
Well, and Tim, speaking of hard drives, Brigard tells a great story of they got a refurbished printer, right, that decommissioned from another MSP. Well, guess what? Hard drive it was from a healthcare agency. Hard drive wasn't wiped. Guess what was on the hard drive?
All kinds of stuff. Those things cache, and they don't properly clear their caches.
So I think, I think this is a huge opportunity for us to just get down to the bare basics. Some comments here. So, but
yeah, I mean, and that's why I think we can go way deep down a rabbit hole and probably put ourselves into a paralysis situation if we just keep going too deep. But that's why I like to fall back and let's go to the controls. Let's go to IG1. Make sure we tick all the boxes that we can, that CyberCNS can and wants to tick. Then go to 2 and then go to 3 and figure out what's in scope, what's out of scope, what maybe requires additional development or maybe some interface with another tool to make it happen. But I think there's a lot of value to be gained by looking at these systematically.
Great.
And determine if we can do these or not.
Yeah. And Lawrence, I think that's what you're saying, right? A little bit like Tim kind of just echoed it. Like, yeah, we can go down a rabbit hole here, but at least basic asset management, doing it at a really, good level, I think is like a huge missing point. Is that also what you're saying, Henry and Daniel? Just seeing everybody chime in the background. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, Henry's point is really good too. I mean, just mapping what we identify through technology with what we've identified through our client engagements. So we know they use this line of business software. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure it's everywhere. Let's understand it. Let's document what type of information it's holding. If it's an EMR, then we know how sensitive that data is and what devices it's on. And we've documented, what the front end software stores versus what the database stores and all these things. And I think CyberCNS can do a lot with that.
I agree. And I think on the other side, not to say eventually, like hypothetically IDS and SIM, but as if you take a tale of two cities and you look at Alien Vault and then you look at Perch and all the other managed SOCs, well, then we have the whole. I'm just making a point here, is that the majority of MSPs can't handle. They don't have a team to handle the true security alerts. So now we have a whole nother piece. Like, yes, we could provide SIM, but can they do anything rhetorically, right? Tim, can they do anything with it? That's a whole nother question.
Yeah, there's a lot to do with it. And that's why, everything is broken down in these little pieces. If we look at the frameworks, and if we just hit these pieces one at a time, eventually they'll get there, right? So if we're doing control 1, control 2, control 3 properly, then everything else falls into place a lot easier. You're not throwing too much at them at once.
Yeah, agree. So Shiva, how is that so far for framework? For feedback?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So basically, I've actually put down all the points that were there. So basically, we will take the controls and see basically what can be automated over there. In terms of basically getting the data and then basically matching it against what we have from an inventory perspective and basically see what discrepancies are there, but also basically tracking assets and basically making those workflows streamlined. I think that adds a lot of sense.
Cool. Anybody else? Did we hit everybody's comments, by the way, on that piece? Anybody want to chime in? I don't want it to be the Andrew and Tim show. I was just Fred.
Hi, Andrew. I hope there's not too much road noise because I am in a moving vehicle, but I'm not driving.
No, you're fine.
There was some talk about IDS and Zeek, and I'm a big fan of Zeek. I just want to be careful about making sure we get everything in the current version solid first, because in order to use Zeek, you have to start capturing traffic, or at least the headers of the traffic. And so that gets into a kind of a different area of, you have to take a spam port or do art poisoning or find some way to see that traffic, which is kind of a major leap. So I just want to caution, we make sure we get everything in the current version really solid before we start thinking about adding something that big of an addition.
Yep, I think you're right. Fred, you deal up market a lot. Anything you'd like to add? Just curious. You don't have to, Fred. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, a lot of what you guys discuss is we don't touch on it quite as much yet, but I find it very beneficial, and at this time I don't really have a whole lot to add. I'm excited for where this product is going. Right now we kind of use a mix of a bunch of different scanning tools out there that do some things good and some things not as good, and I really want to streamline down to using mostly what CyberCNS can do for our clients, and so that those are my thoughts right now. Hopefully as we go on I'll have a lot more to add.
So but if I were to summarize for you, Fred, it's let's hit the blocking and tackling so you can get rid of 2 or 3 tools.
Absolutely. Because I mean, that was a great point. It's like you can provide us with all these ways to track the security for our clients, but a lot of us MSPs, we don't have the resources to have an entire team that go through and create the processes to remediate all these things. Right now, it's just usually it's one person that's sharing the security hat with service manager or some other management role. So yeah, if I can streamline the tools that I need to know how to use to remediate the problems, and that makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, I pictured, Tim, as Fred said that, I was picturing our conversation yesterday with cyber defense matrix, because as soon as you hit over detection, your process and people start to ratchet up. So
yeah. And the challenge that we were talking about yesterday is it's not just our people, it's our clients' people that have to get involved. And that's a lot of the roadblocks that a lot of us are hitting. Is we can do a lot, but when it comes time to make some decisions or provide valuable input, we need to learn as an industry or how to force our clients to sit down, glue somebody to a chair and get some decisions made, and then do it again, whenever the cycle comes around again.
Yeah. And by the way, Chris, that's a real, Shivak, I think Chris just brought up a really good point as well, which is all of a sudden, the price point that, is attracting a lot of partners to CyberCNS when you start ingesting large amounts of data, as we saw at Perch. That price point goes completely vertical.
Yeah, I was a little concerned too about just the overhead, the technical overhead. If we're starting to collect too much with the agents, that we may, I know when we do file integrity monitoring with the audit beat agent in Perch, it does have a performance impact. So I'd be a little bit wary there as well.
So one of the things that we're doing, and Tim and others basically say, the biggest thing that I see with a lot of the tools which we want to change is basically like a lot of tools basically collect all the logs and then basically you throw it into a central location and then say, I'll process it over there. Our approach has always been that we'll essentially look at the logs at the edge and basically give enough of information at the edge so that you don't need to ship everything into the central site. And we basically look at things from, yep, is this basically is this something that is basically an incident worthy piece of data, only then basically send it to the central site. So that is basically kind of the approach that we're taking. In fact, I'm forcing my team to do the same with things like Active Directory, etc., because just dumping a whole bunch of information onto the server basically doesn't help, because neither can people track it, nor can they do this. But they require insights of that data, but they don't, the actual data basically is there in the remote systems, or it could basically be stored in other locations where you can basically offline download it and basically look at it. But what we're focusing heavily on is basically the metadata, which is like, what is the signal, and basically remove all the noise from that whole piece. And if you want basically the entire data, yeah, you can go and download it from somewhere else and basically get the data.
I think, I mean, again, my voicing my concerns here, Shiva, if we head down the whole data path and log path, that, you know, again, our lowest hanging fruit is regulated businesses. The regulated businesses are going to want logs. And then if there's any forensic stuff and, you know, they're using our tool and for some reason we can't get to those logs, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to rain on the parade. I don't know. Tim, am I off in that?
No, I think you're correct. And then the other thing that again, I'm worried about is if we start to do too much processing at the edge, you know, so on client devices, then we may introduce some performance problems, you know, so if we're doing too many queries on the agents, if we're digging, you know, if we're watching MD5 sums of all the files on the file system, then, you know, we can see some performance impact on clients, which would, you know, we all know what happens there. So I'd be concerned about that. And then, you know, as Andrew said, we already are pulling that data, you know, a lot of us are at least, you know, into, you know, something like Purge, where and it doesn't have to be Purge, but, you know,
Right.
something in the Purge like that, where we're getting syslog and event logs from everything. And then we're doing analysis, you know, in the cloud on that data. Now, could CyberCNS potentially make use of that? Yeah, I think maybe so. And the data already exists and there's APIs to connect to it. So maybe. And I think there may even be some things that can be done on the agent that are low impact that CyberCNS can use. I would just try to make sure that all the things that we're doing are justified by mapping them to, you know, something that's required to be done first.
Yeah. Agree. Okay, well, I know we beat this pretty hard, and love the spirit of it, Shiva, and I hope we eventually get there. But I'd love to get the first three controls nailed, where people go, there's not a solution for MSPs close on the planet.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I in fact put it out because I wanted feedback from the group. See, as I said, it's basically we have these different ways of going forward, and the point is that when people ask us like, what's the next step in this? What can you do? What can you not do? We need to have an answer for this, and I would rather have an answer that's validated by the folks here rather than basically giving something off the top of my head. So which is why basically I put in something for discussion, and we've got a whole bunch of things that basically make sense right now. So we can basically work on those pieces.
I guess the cherry on top here, Shiv, is if we nail 1, 2, and 3, then all the compliance stuff behind it, which is the next lowest hanging fruit that MSPs are going to have to deal with, I think fall right in line. And then, so would you guys out there agree with that? Like if you could just hit a Y or N in chat real quick. Yeah. And then Shiva, so to your point on help with reporting and all these other things, like I'm not saying it has to be this, but does something like a base camp make sense? I'm using that as air quotes. It doesn't have to be base camp, where people would say, yes, I want to be involved with this quote unquote project to give feedback on reporting or alerting or whatever, that there can be this real time, you know, interaction.
No, we can do that on, I think, Slack, because the channel is open. The only thing which I want is basically some feedback in terms of saying, these are the kinds of things that we would essentially like to see in a daily report, right? Because um, I can basically put something together in a daily report saying that so many new vulnerabilities were found, so many this were found, but how does it basically affect you? And what are the things that are of consequence? That is basically primarily what is important.
Shiva, why a daily report versus dashboard where people would just be able to, where it be
So
interactive?
what we are seeing, and basically is the truth of the matter, is that not everyone has the time to basically go and click on the dashboard on a daily basis. They would rather be basically served by email on a daily basis, which essentially kind of people, they look at and basically say, okay, do I have anything to deal with today, or I don't have anything to deal with today? So those
So
are basically uh,
I'm just saying, so like if you look at Tim's comment, he's going the exact opposite, saying he ignores daily reports. Tim, what would you see, like where I'd rather have a dashboard alerts, I lose email. If there are things that need action, they should be ticket. Yeah, that's a good point too. Tickets.
Yeah, I think a daily summary is, again, very likely to be ignored. And maybe once a day, though, if we had a flood of tickets come in, flood, using the term jokingly a little bit, but I mean, if the tickets would come in on what needs to happen today, then I think that has a lot more value if they're actionable and they're concise and they are necessary actions.
yeah. So basically, this is primarily driven again by remediation stems. So what we're talking about is on a daily basis, if there is anything that is actionable, that is something that needs to be done, that's when basically you will get a notification that these are the things that are basically pending.
Well, I guess the question to the group is, yes or no, would you use it? So let's just, if it was, I don't know, a report, or would you ignore it? And then, so let's just start with that question. Yes or no? Yes being yes, we'd love that, or no, we wouldn't. And then question two would be, what would you like it to be? So if you guys could just give us some quick feedback. So I'm hearing from Tim and some others here that I prefer more real-time dashboard versus point in time to digest. We've heard tickets. I lose emails. Anybody else? Because this is this is, how your product will, where the dev team will spend time. Okay. All right. So, so feedback are dashboard and tickets, new, for example, Henry says dashboard on new untagged assets and security alerts, please. Personally, I use email, but think for CNS, I believe you mean I'd prefer a dashboard, I believe, Lawrence. I live in tickets. No to reports. Dashboards are better. My feeling is that reports are for clients, tickets are for us. Dashboards are good too. Dashboards, let's see, dashboards and tickets. No, I mean the guys whose job is it. Sorry, Lawrence, I'm not following you. But by and large, Shiva, we're getting dashboard and tickets. Any thoughts, Shiva, or questions on the feedback?
Yeah. So what I'll do is that we basically we'll make the dashboards the default, and if somebody wants to enable it, they can enable it. So we'll just give you the option to enable.
Oh, Shiva. So like, aren't all dashboards, can't they turn into a report, you're saying,
Yes.
in this
Yes.
version?
Yes.
So maybe like is that what you're saying? Hey, there's an easy step where you're like, okay, turn my dashboard into a report each day and email me.
Yes, that's right.
There you go. How's that, guys? Easy peasy. Yep. Okay. So yeah, yes, perfect. There you go. Now everybody's got the option that's already built into the product. Good. What else, Shiva? Do you need feedback on it? Wasn't there some else like alerts or something that you needed feedback on as well?
No, just that what are the default things that we basically need to kind of create tickets, etc. on, so that like people don't need to go out and basically start creating it. Like for example, asset creation, new assets, basically, etc. seems to be something that by default we should essentially enable ticket creation and notification, right? So things like that, basically, what type of critical vulnerabilities basically do you need notifications on? So so that what we'll do is out of the box, these will be enabled. And if you want to switch them off, you can always switch them off. The problem today we are finding is that we have not basically configured those default rules, because of which people are not configuring those rules. So
Got it. Got to get ready. Thanks, Lawrence. Good to see you, bud. Trevor asks, wait, new asset. Yeah, Tim says new asset not seen for X days, new unauthorized software. Like to me, Shiva, those are like I'll give you a case in point. The Carl's big thing was, when they did a scan in SSH, they found someone at a bank opened up SSH. So I'm using that as the analogy to Tim's. Like the big wins for an MSP is like, oh yeah, someone plugs something in, or an open, yeah, like Tim's saying, like an open, hey, Mr. Customer, by the way, did you know, or did somebody just plug this in, or did somebody just open this, or like that gives like the wow factor, for the, and then the MSP being able to report on that.
yeah, so that's where we basically want to create these notifications and these reports, which basically show these changes and basically kind of make it more useful, and basically make that out of the box rather than basically saying that you have to come and configure it. So that's where we basically want to change that, this thing, saying that these are best practices in terms of configuring this. So we're going to basically load up those best practices, and what is not a best practice, that you can basically choose to do it offline. That's fine.
Yep. So Tim, Henry's putting in, so plus what Tim said, plus new user accounts. I'm assuming here, like a lot where you're going, Henry, is a lot of the AD stuff, right? Yep. That way it's audible. Yeah, it's like almost like, the who did what, when, where, Shiva. That kind of, a la Netrix type stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that we may have missed over, is things that are reports aren't necessarily something that we can audit that someone's done something on an ongoing basis for, but tickets we can always come back to. And if we were going through a process like a SOC 2 or something, and we need to audit that we're following this control, tickets are the way we can do that. And especially if CyberCNS feeds a ticket in and also feeds in some metadata with it that says this ticket's for this control, we can go in and do a query of our ConnectWise or whatever ticket system we're using and say, okay, Mr. Auditor, you want to know for doing this control, here's all the tickets that show that we're doing it.
That's really, really good, Tim. Which is going to happen a ton with CMMC, by the way, because that's what the assessor is going to ask. What's auditable, right? Shiva, where is it here? I know. Where did it go? Trevor asks, for the beta, is that just going to be in the cloud or self-hosted available?
1 week after basically we have it on the cloud, we'll basically also provide a self-hosted version that you can install on your own. So.
Okay. Henry saying plus application baseline data, missing required data, discovered denied apps. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Okay. All right. I know we're at the top of the hour. Anything, Shiva, from your side we didn't get to that you were hoping?
No, I think we got to everything. I just wanted to get a quick feedback from the team in terms of the part of basically us integrating the SOAR as part of this. Like it's a choice. I guess we said it's a choice. You want to basically integrate. You don't want to use it. It's fine. But we are basically using this as the backend for our ability to create tickets, to do notifications, and then expand on that capability. Is that basically something that's okay with everyone? That's all I want.
Looks like love the inclusion. Yes on SOAR. Looks so far so good, Shiva.
Perfect.
Good. Anyone else before we wrap up the partner call for the week? Tim, I'll get with you. If Dennis is still on, I'll get with you guys and we'll try and, if you guys are cool with us trying to wrap up that webinar series. I'll put something out there. Okay, thanks, Tim. All right. Well, Shiva, good to close it up?
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shiva. Thanks, dev team. Have an awesome week, everybody.